Yeah.
Excellent. Well, what I wanted to talk about yesterday I was working until about 1 in the morning, and I watched the movie Father Stew with Mark Wahlberg. Have you guys seen that at all? It's actually it was kind of cool. I just had it on as background noise so I could kind of stay awake while I was working, and it was actually kind of worthwhile, which surprised me. But this week I did another module that kind of focuses a little bit more on art periods and art movements, talks about them a little bit, as well as um, the asking you to brainstorm for your final project. And then I also did another one that is going to be due on the Sunday after Thanksgiving because I'm kind of a jerk. That is the PowerPoint video. And I wanted to talk about each of those four things today. And if you guys have any questions, throw them in, and I will ask for questions as well. So, first off, have you guys had a chance to look at either of these two modules? Or at least skim over it? Okay, good. The first one, we're looking at specifically art periods and art movements. Now, I hope I haven't done a disservice to you guys because I haven't treated this class at all like an art history class. I don't, if you want art history, you can take a survey class or an art history class. What I wanted to do instead is focus on helping you to grow those skills of critical thinking and with through the tools of artistic critique. Now, I've noticed a difference. Have you guys noticed a difference at all in how you approach both art and the regular stuff that you do every day with those tools in your back of your head?
I know in like some conversations I have just like in general, I'll like have like another question to ask, like just get more info. So like that just kind of broaden my understanding.
Having those four tools, has that helped you in the other school work that you have as well?
A little bit. I think I know like in history it's made me like question like I wonder why they did it this way or like what event. Like just asking more in-depth questions in general.
All right, excellent. Very good. And it's interesting to me too. You mentioned history, and this is a week after voting day, and I just remembered two things. Winston Churchill said a couple things. One was the strongest argument against democracy is a 5 minute conversation with the average voter, which I thought was great, especially in today's world of social media. That's especially true. As people, I don't know if you've seen any of those exit poll interviews people have done, where they kind of curate the dumbest of the dumb when they answer questions, and it's just you just feel so bad for whoever it was that raised them. And you wonder how they managed to dress themselves in the morning. But the other thing that Winston Churchill said, which came to mind, was that history is recorded by the victors. And whether or not that's always true, the sentiment is that there's only one voice recording history for the most part. And that is completely true, I think. For the most part, there's only, people are condensing, for example, 50 years of activity down to a couple paragraphs in a textbook. You only get the one voice. And so I think it is really important as you learn about things, history, historical context, social context, that you use your two powers of critical thinking to explore and get more information than just the one facet that's presented to you. So I appreciate that observation. There's some really good quotes from prime ministers of England, and Like the Israeli who was a prime minister under Queen Victoria said at one point, he's talking about contemporary, he said, he's a humble man with plenty to be humble about. I always thought that that was pretty funny. But this is a particularly important perspective to have as we start looking at things like art periods and art movements. You guys remember from the previous module, what is the difference between an art period and an art movement? There's several differences, but just a couple. An art period is generally bound by geographical location and specific culture and how they behave within a very broad or loosely defined area of time. And one of the examples I gave in the module was about Palmyra, about the half millennium BC, where their art seems to be pretty cohesive. And what's interesting about art periods, and you learn that, more about that. I have you look at a website that has 6 different geographical regions on the planet to explore, and I want you to spend about 15 minutes in each of those, and just look at them and check them out to kind of get your head around it, with a mind to seeing if you can identify any cohesive characteristics. An art period is usually going to be anywhere from 50 years to several hundred years. And it's how generally the art of a culture is grouped together in association with particular cultural movements. And these are really broad based, and our ancestors didn't move around and communicate as rapidly as we do today. I mean, like, we are orders of magnitude more rapid and more connected than our ancestors were. Not even accounting for technology, just because of our networks and everything else as well. And a big part of that is technology, of course. But just as an example, about 700 years ago, 99% of people that lived in Europe lived, they were born, they lived, and they died within 25 miles of the same location. And and now 25 miles is how much you travel in any given day. And not to mention, if you want to go to Navajo Lake and spend an afternoon, or Pine Valley or any place like that, it's not that big of a deal for us. But the reason why there's so many little teeny towns between St. George and Ogden is because the towns were established about as far apart as a horse-drawn wagon could travel in a day. So they're about 20 miles apart. And we could do that, like I said, in an afternoon. And so these art periods are like when you're talking about, for example, the expansion phase of the Roman Empire, or when uh, Turkey was ruled by uh, Latin Christians, or when uh, several Muslim uh, kingdoms ruled North Africa. These are periods of history that can span anywhere from a couple hundred to 500 years. And then as we get closer to the modern day, because of the increase in capacity for people to move and be connected, those periods generally seem to grow a little bit shorter as we get closer to today. So art periods are generally going to be geographically defined, culturally defined, and bound by um, decades and centuries of time. So significant amounts of time. Now, with art movements, you really see this start picking up after the Renaissance. The Renaissance lasted for about 500 years, from about 1100 to 1650, right around there. in that time period, and it was specific to, not entirely specific, but it was pretty specific to Europe. That's what we're talking about when we talk about the Renaissance. It means rebirth, where people were reconnecting with the humanist and naturalistic depictions of our ancestors from a couple thousand years ago. So specific, that's where you see a lot of Greek kind of and Roman kind of imagery in the artwork. That's where you see, and that kind of establishes class and highbrow and education and academics kind of stuff when they harken back to the classics, which I think is kind of interesting because without the Muslims taking care of the Bible and the writings of all those Greek and Roman philosophers for about 400 or 500 years, the Renaissance really could not have happened. But the Renaissance doesn't look at the Muslims that kept those records. They look back at the Greeks and the Romans and completely ignore these people that helped them out, which is probably, I can understand that because so many Europeans wanted to go and kill Muslims in the name of God, for the peace of the world kind of thing during all the Crusades. Do you know the Fifth Crusade was ended in a 2 hour conversation between two people? Fifth Crusade, this cardinal wanted to make a name for himself, and so he wanted to launch a new crusade to liberate the Holy Land. And of course, he attacked uh, Camille, who was the ruler of northern Egypt at the time. He came down, he got all these people, he kept throwing Christian soldiers at the Muslims in hopes of wearing them down, and that if enough Christians died, then he'd get more reinforcements from Europe. And during all this time, St. Francis of Assisi, you know who he is, right? He was the guy that would preach to squirrels. And he's shown with pictures of birds landing on his arms and stuff because he felt that if Christianity is about compassion, compassion should be shown to all of nature, not just people that you like. Well, he had given up all of his family's wealth and everything to live as pretty much an itinerant preacher in Italy, and he was pissed off about the Fifth Crusade. So he and his buddy started hiking up and down the beaches until they found somebody that got tired of his whining and was able to take him across the Mediterranean to North Africa. And the cardinal at the time thought, this guy is such an idiot. If I throw him at the Muslims and they kill him, we can use him as uh, like a martyr to get all the other Christians in Europe to come down and help us kill these guys. So he said, "Sure, you go and talk to um, Al Camille, and we'll see what shakes out." Well, the guards at the camp for Al Camille were kind of thought he was an idiot and kind of crazy, and they taunted him and stuff. But he refused to be anything other than polite, and they finally didn't know what to do with him. So they asked their commander, "Well, what? This guy's crazy. He wants to talk to Al Camille." The commander thought, "Well, okay, sure, why not?" And so he goes and talks to Al Camille. St. Francis thought any reasoning person, anybody with reasonable intelligence, would understand that the message of Christ was compassion. And Al Camille thought any reasoning person, anybody with half a brain or greater, would understand that the Prophet Muhammad and the Quran were voices of reason and taught compassion. So they both had similar ideas, but they were just waiting for somebody else to talk to, apparently. And he was impressed. Al Camille was impressed that St. Francis was completely undeterred. And in a 2 hour conversation that they impressed each other so much that Al Camille thought, okay, I've got to end this war and get the Europeans to go home. So the Fifth Crusade ended at that time, essentially. And the rest of the time, Al Camille was just planning on things to do to get the Christians out of Egypt. And so Al Camille came back to camp. The cardinal was disappointed that he hadn't gotten killed. And later, um, the commander, whose name was, I think his name was John. something or another. I'm sorry, everybody's named John back then, so it doesn't narrow it down. But what happened is that the cardinal did not know the Nile flooded every year at the same time. Al Kamil did. So he led the Christian encampment to the banks of the Nile. When the Nile flooded, all the horses and all the men were trapped in mud, and Al Kamil, with all of his cavalry, charged out as fast as they could. You'd imagine all these Christians peeing their pants because they're scared. But what he did is he brought doctors for the guys that got sick. He brought food to feed everybody, and he brought his horses so that they could pull their horses out of the mud. And the commander of the Christian forces said he had never met such a group of people that behaved so Christian. And so the Fifth Crusade ended without any more bloodshed. Anyway, that quite a bit. The I don't know why I started talking about that, but I think that does tie in with one of the things that I've talked about art. Is as we explore the art and understand it, as it helps us to understand other people with different ideas, different concepts, different thoughts, and that is really probably one of the best reasons for applying your critical thinking skills to really get to understand other people. Anyway, so that was towards the beginning of the Renaissance, and because the Christians and the Muslims interacted with each other so much, I think a big part of the Renaissance happened because of these new ways of thinking. And then after the Renaissance, we start moving into Baroque and Romantic um, eras, and then in the beginning of the 1800s, that's when the art movements really start. The art movements, the artists have more freedom to kind of explore topics that they want to, because beforehand artists were basically told we need a commission, we need a portrait of King John the 17th or whatever done on next Tuesday. This is the style that you got to do it in, and the artist did it because they basically worked. Um, they were gig laborers basically. They work for gigs, but they were paid on salary. And after with the end of the Renaissance, you also get the birth of the Industrial Revolution. Get a huge um, expansion of disposable income, and that's when artists start having the freedom to explore what they really feel they want to, and they start addressing cultural concerns, societal concerns, um, questioning governments, questioning politics, questioning relationships with other groups of people within groups of their own, talking about religion, talking about different aspects of religion and philosophy, and you like in Northern Europe, there's a growth of a huge growth of paintings where, under the guise of biblical paintings, they'll do these huge genre farm scenes that are just incredibly detailed. Have you seen those Where's Waldo kind of stuff, or the Dowdle paintings, stuff like that, with a whole bunch of activity in it? And you look at it, and it's obviously farm life, but it's under the scope of religious art or under the umbrella. And one of the biggest differences, or two of the biggest differences between periods and movements, is that in movements, artists start to be able to do art that they feel driven to do instead of what they're commissioned to do. And the other big thing is that with this huge growth of networking and the speed of communication and travel, then information is shared so rapidly that movements may last as little as a couple years instead of 50 to several hundred. And we see that picking up towards the end of the 1800s and into the start of the 1900s, beginning of the 20th century. And then you start seeing overlapping movements as different groups of artists start forming clubs, basically like the Dadaists. They would start forming clubs to kind of interact and share ideas. And that's when you get like Braque and Picasso developed Cubism, and you get the Jugend or the Stil movement, where you have people like Mondrian with the horizontal and vertical black lines on a white canvas. and then we move into abstract expressionism, where you, like Jackson Pollock, the hyper realists, the conceptual artists of all sorts of different stripes, and like right now, there is no specific movement that artists are in because there's so many different artists and little groups and clubs that do different things, and there's so many different artists that do their own things. So it's hard to really categorize very many movements currently because of the speed of communication, how fast we produce things. I think you could even call NFTs an art movement, but that's problematic because some are very retro. They make it look like the early arcade game images, and others are digitalized photographs. And the only thing that they have in common is that they're both non-fungible tokens. So, but you can really see that big difference, can you? So, do you have any questions about periods and movements aside from my whole Saint Francis of Assisi and Al Camille aside? Okay, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a fan of those guys. I think they're awesome. Al Camille was a grandnephew of Saladin, who was a hero of I think the second or third crusade. Did you guys ever see the City of Heaven or the Kingdom of Heaven? Okay, that's a really good film, and it talks about that whole period too. But anyway, the next thing I want to talk about is a PowerPoint. Have you guys made PowerPoints before? Okay, there are lots and lots and lots of videos that maybe 5 6 minutes long that you can find on how to do a PowerPoint. And what it basically is, you put together for this assignment, you'll put together anywhere from 7 to 10 slides, where the first slide is an opening image with the name of your artist, and then you'll have 5 to 8 slides that are informed from your annotated bibliography. So things that you want to talk about the artist, and then the last slide is going to be just a listing of your sources you cited, the 5 sources you cited. Now, this, I mean, it does sound like it's kind of complicated. One thing reason I want to do this is so that you can share the information you've learned about your artist with the other people in class, and that's the prime reason. The PowerPoints they're pretty straightforward and easy to create the slides. The slide, I don't want you to have anything written on it. Well, you'll have some stuff written, but I don't want you to fill it up with words. Each slide should have 1 to 3 images of the artist and or their work. And you can do, and I've sent links to in the module. There's a link that to a list of several videos of PowerPoints that people in my class have done before. So I want you to look through those, get an idea of what they did. I don't want you to do a biography. What I would like is, I think a good example would be you show a slide of Damien Hirst in his workshop. That's the opening. Say, this is Damien Hirst. And then the next 5 slides are images from either like one of his exhibits that he's done or one of his sculptures that he's done. And you just spend a minute or two talking about it. Briefly describe it, talk about how you put it together, uh, maybe say a little bit about what you think it means and whether or not you like it. And you're basically applying those 4 tools of critical thinking or artistic critique to each of the works. Or maybe your artist is Ai Weiwei, and you want to talk about the different kinds of things he does. So you show different photographs or different images from different displays that he's done. Or if your artist is thus a I can't remember the guy's name. He's a Korean who does these incredible hanging fabrics now, but he does a lot of different kinds of stuff. So you could show examples of different kinds of things that he's done. Or if you like Betty Saar, you show like 8 different examples of her work. Talk a little bit about where she was born and grew up and what she does now. But then each slide, you talk about what you learned about the artist in relation to the imagery on that slide, and you can use your notes from your annotated bibliography. And then the very last one, you just show it up at the end and say, "Hey, here's my sources. I really like this artist because of this and this," or "I thought I liked this artist, but after seeing the latest show they did, I wanted to throw up in my mouth a little," or whatever you want to do. It's hopefully you don't have that experience with any of the artists, but then after after making the slides, I included a link to a video that just tells you how to record yourself talking about the slides so that you can turn it into a video. It will show the video would just be what you see on your screen as you go through the slides and talk about it. So you'll need access to a microphone. And then when you record that, you can either upload it to your own YouTube channel or to Vimeo, and then just submit the link. And so that's what you have to do for that. And then the discussion is going to be 2 parts. First part is you're going to submit your links to your PowerPoint in the discussion. And then the second part is you comment on 3 other people's works. And I don't care how long the comment is. I just want you to see 3 other presentations, and that's it. Okay. Does that sound totally doable? Any questions? Okay. Then any questions you think the other people might have? Oh, one question I think it was the other class who asked it last week. Does this artist that we're doing an annotated bibliography on, does it have to be somebody that we looked at before? Can it be anyone? So, well, no, it's that artist that you picked a couple assignments ago when I asked you to pick a specific artist to do the reports on. So whichever artist that was that you wrote a reflection about, and it's the same artist that you did the annotated bibliography on, because that'll make it a lot easier on you. Okay. So the last thing is, um, this last thing is actually in the same art periods and art movements module, and that is brainstorm and design for your project piece. Remember, we looked at Sundiata and the Mali Empire, and we keep returning to that. This is the 4th time we'll be touching on it. I want you to think about something. I want you to go back and look at those modules, and I specifically give the module and the title of the element of that module um, for reference in this assignment. I want you to go back, look at that, think about the things that you do yourself, the things that you enjoy, the things that you find in your life that you indispensable, and consider how that would look like if our friends in Mali made it 700 years ago. One example, like for Brianna, would be a water bottle. What would their water bottle look like? Or a soccer ball? Would they play another kind of game? For Alex, I have no idea. What would T-shirt designs for join the Mali army or whatever? What would or the Palace Guard or Queen Amina rules? Anything. What would that look like? You've done a collage where you deal with the idea of the horse and rider. Maybe you want to make something like that out of a different material. You can make it out of clay. You can make it out of stuff you have at home. You can make a soft sculpture, or you can make furniture. Or if you want to make a Molinese RV camper, if they had discovered the Grand Canyon 700 years ago, what would it look like for a Molinese family trip? I want you to think about these kinds of things, and what I'm going to send out another really short module to kind of go into it a little bit more. But for the purpose of this, you're going to be brainstorming, and what you'll do is write down your notes, write down your sketches. If you do anything preliminary, that's great, and then you can you'll take an image of your sketchbook or whatever your notes are and stuff like that, and that's what you'll submit. Um, and typing up your notes so that I can actually read them if I want to, which I probably won't because they're yours. But I want to see that you've thought about it and you've brainstormed it. So think about that. And for this thing, you can use whatever medium you want to use. But I want you to start thinking about what you're going to be doing because after Thanksgiving gets back, I think we only have 1 or 2 weeks after that. These projects will be due when the semester's over, well, for our final, basically. All right. So be thinking about that. Now, do you guys have any questions or anything like that for me? All right, good. Then, if you guys are good, we are done. All right.
Thank
We
you.
will-
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope you guys have a super awesome weekend. Now, if you are having any questions about these assignments, please email me, and then I will send out, excuse me, something supplemental to help other people understand. Okay. All right. Excellent. Thank you so much. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I will. Oh, we aren't going to be meeting next Tuesday. Okay, it's the Thanksgiving holiday. You guys don't even go to school next Tuesday, right?
I think we don't have school on Wednesday, but I don't know.
Well, let's do double checking then. Um, if we do have to meet on Tuesday, I'm happy to do that. I will double check on the academic calendar. Let's see. Okay, what day is the 23rd?
I think
Wednesday.
yeah,
The
Wednesday.
23rd is Wednesday. Okay, so we are gonna have to meet on Tuesday. I am sorry. Okay, so we will meet on Tuesday. We'll do it really short, and I'll probably send out something else to remind people about their final project, so you guys can be ready on that. All right. So I look forward to seeing you guys after the weekend. Have have a great weekend and try really hard not to get sick or get arrested. All right, we'll see you guys.